Hello, my friends. Welcome to 40 Days to PMP Exam Success. Today is day 28, and we're talking about Process Domain Task 14, and it's simply titled Establish Project Governance Structure. Now, what exactly is governance? Governance is a framework within which authority is exercised. In fact, let's open up our PMBOK guides. PMBOK guide Chapter 2, it's on page 43, and I'm talking about the 6th edition, and it simply reads, governance is the framework within which authority is exercised in organizations. This framework includes, but is not limited to, now pay attention to the specific language, what governance entails, what it's all about. Governance is all about rules, policies, procedures, norms, relationships, systems, and processes. Rules, policies, procedures, norms, relationships, systems, and processes. This governance framework influences how objectives of the organization are set and achieved, how risk is monitored and assessed, and how performance is optimized. So, a lot to take in, but at a high level, think about it as a framework within which authority is exercised. And within that framework, you got to think about the top 4 things: rules, policies, procedures, norms, okay, systems. So when you think about governance, a project without governance is in an unstable state, because anything can happen. The more governance, the more predictability. The less governance, the less predictability. Let's also read here, still on the same page, 2.4.2. It reads, recent PMI research reveals that governance refers to organizational or structural arrangements at all levels of an organization, designed to determine and influence the behavior of the organization's members. That is the reason for governance. It's to get people in that right behavioral pattern. That's what it's all about. If there are no rules and guidelines and policies and procedures and norms, people do whatever they like. And that is not ideal when you have a lot of people working together. There needs to be a framework to get the work done, to get to the end goal. And that's really what governance is all about. If you think about any of the other frameworks that we discuss, like Scrum as a framework, it does have some governance, some pretty tight governance, by the way, because we have 3 very specific roles, 5 specific events, and 3 specific artifacts. And that's what makes a framework. Yes, we can build around it, but those pillars, that structure is in place. All right, still here it says, PMI's research suggests that the concept of governance is multidimensional and includes consideration of people, roles, structures, and policies, and requires providing direction and oversight through data and feedback. So from this definition, my friends, you can tell that the topic of governance is very specific. It is very important, because without the right level of governance, it will be harder to succeed in our project environments. All right, so let's get on the road and let's talk about establish project governance structure. Now that you've got a very robust idea, reading from the guide, you now know what to expect in this task. Hopefully this task will make a whole lot more sense to you now that you understand the concept of governance as a framework within which authority is exercised. All right. So let's jump into breaking down the task itself. So, establish project governance structure. What does it mean to establish? To establish means to put in place, to set in orbit, to stabilize. That's what we mean by establish. So you as a project manager, project personnel, PMO representative, whatever you are, the idea is to put in place governance structures. Now the governance structure could do either of two things. It could be a unique structure, very peculiar to the project, or it could be a structure that mirrors the governance in the organization. Because you do know organizations primarily have that governance. Mirroring that governance is what this refers to. Okay. So this very well could be mirroring the organization's governance structure. So we got a couple of enablers. The first enabler simply states, determine appropriate governance for a project. So ask yourself that question. What governance is needed for my project? And based on your findings as far as which governance is needed for your project, tailor accordingly, right? But it's important that we understand certain key words associated with this concept. So when we talk about replicating an organizational governance, we're talking about those rules, those policies, those processes that are organization-wide, taking them and making them appropriate for the project. It's really what this is talking about. The second enabler simply states, define escalation paths and thresholds. So, we talk about governance, we talk about escalating issues, conditions that may be experienced on the project, especially when they're out of bounds, when they're outside of the project manager's authority or a particular individual's authority. We got to talk about escalation. And that's really it. Again, governance is a framework within which authority is exercised. So my friends, that's about it, okay? I hope you now have a solid understanding of the term governance, and I hope you're able to use this to make sense out of task 14 under the process domain. The PMI define project governance separately in the 6th edition, and they define it pretty much as a framework, again, functions and processes that guide how project management is applied, how project management activities are carried out in order to create that unique deliverable. So these keywords, frameworks, functions, processes, they're always closely associated with the word governance. And a governance framework, as PMI say, should be tailored to the specific firm, to the organization's culture, to the types of projects, and the needs of the organization for it to be effective. All right? I hope this has helped you, and I'll have a few open-ended questions when we get into that section, which is after this. So stay tuned, and I'll see you in that section. You take care, and see you tomorrow.